So what I thought we could talk about is something that I've experienced quite a lot when leading, circling and surrender leadership. And it's this phenomenon where people go like, why does it have to be so dark? Like, do we have to be in this sad, dark vibe all the time? Why can't we just be happy? Why can't we just be with ecstasy or joy or all the good things in life? And in a way where it's like, is this circling? Like, does circling just mean being sad, basically? Yes. So I'm curious where that takes you.
Yeah. And I just like to start with I can share that I've also gotten something similar where I think the phrasing I almost got was, oh, you seem to like feeling miserable or feeling the misery. And whenever I get that comment, um, I want to nuance it more because that's something I really deeply care about in this practice, actually. So I'm quite happy to talk about that. In my experience, we can't quite say no to certain emotions without also saying no to others. So like our avoidance is actually across everything. So if I say no to like my sadness or pain or fear, in a way, in my own experience, I've also started saying no to my joy or and I think it's quite immediate to give people, I think many people actually build trust quite fast on circling when they start feeling that, oh, I stop avoid feeling my fear. And I will quite immediately actually feel very alive and very blissful, for example. That's quite normal for me to get in touch with bliss or ecstasy when I'm really allowing myself to feel the depth of my fear as well. Um, there's something to the flavor where it ideally also doesn't feel like we're just sitting in it forever. But it actually starts moving. Yeah. Wonder what your experience is.
Yeah, I think that's actually the last thing you said is pretty spot on what well, something I'm interested in these days. And it's like what I found for myself in circling, or like something I've become quite good at, is staying with what is, and really trusting that. Like we talk about trusting experience. So it's like, okay, there's this tension in me and it feels like anxiety. Okay, it's very likely important somehow. So it's like not push it away, but like really stay with it, explore it, allow it, welcome it, whatever word we choose to use.
Yeah.
And then recently I've encountered um, people, teachers that talk more about liberating what is there. And I've gotten curious about like sort of what's the difference here? Because in my world, liberation comes from staying with. But then I can also see that there is a risk of overdoing that, where the staying with becomes a holding on to, um, rather than like maybe I can just let this go and move into something else.
Yeah. In some cases, I even have the sense that in myself or others, that it's not just, oh, I could let it go, but there's almost a sense in which we like drop into a feeling instead of being with what is in a way or something. Like we might even have trained ourselves to like collapse into like self-doubt or tiredness or instead, or like it's almost like there's also a liberated version there I think people can have different patterns. I do experience it though as quite significant, the amount of avoidance that everyone seems to generally have, like on a collective level. Whereas I experience it as like this deep exhale and circling when, oh, we actually start to feel ourselves. Oh, there's this backlog of things we might have avoided the last 2 days and been on social media or had sugar or whatever. And it feels uncomfortable, but it actually feels uncomfortable for about like something between 30 seconds and 30 minutes or something. Like it's actually quite contained, the discomfort. And then there's this deep exhale or groundedness that is to be found. Like, oh, it's of course, it's not actually that bad to feel that fear.
Yeah, and I guess there's also something to this. Well, firstly, like it clearly has to do with identification for me. It's like the difference between, oh, there's anxiety here, and I can experience that, and I can be like, oh, fuck, I'm anxious, and it seems to be related to how I want to do really well when I lead this, and I don't know how to do that with you, and now I feel so small and vulnerable, and then often that's actually it. Then it's expressed, and I'm there, and it feels scary slash alive.
Yeah.
And depending on whether I focus on it being scary or focus on it being alive, I have quite a different experience.
Yeah.
Um,
And yeah, so there's a point to make also of, oh, we are not just feeling the pain and it's okay because it will pass pretty soon, but there's also inherent pleasure or meaningfulness. Oh, this is actually what I'm feeling. Like this is there's almost something quite empowering of like, why would I sometimes experience that with meditators, but as soon as I feel something, they're like, okay, and how do I let it go? In my system, it just in me intuitively I sense it as almost like a bit rushed and the focus on letting go, where there's something like, that's you. That's your experience. Why would you immediately want to let it go? Like there's something, it's just like in my experience, I can reach a point where just I feel full of myself, no matter what it is. And it's like, wow, yeah, this is me. I feel fear and oh, there might be some sensual discomfort, but it's also just inherently pleasurable because it's true or it's my experience. So I think I strive towards like a sober way of being with our emotions where we don't hold on unnecessarily. Like there's a way in which we like intuitively, oh, I feel scared, and then suddenly I just let it go, or it kind of like I transcended it, and I don't need to avoid it, or like I'm okay with feeling it.
hmm. I think a thing for me is also that it's showing up in connection. So that I'm a bit careful with this saying that it's like only my thing. Well, in one way that is true. It is happening in me. It is my body responding in some way. But
Yeah,
it's also information about something that's happening between us that is relevant. So I'm careful with the I just have to regulate and let this go myself,
yeah,
because that's in some ways actually robbing you of what's happening and like of the potential for intimacy or us being together in something.
yeah. I need
Um,
to swap my microphone for 1 second to charge my laptop.
mm,
Give me 1 second. Yeah, should actually be fine now.
cool.
Yeah, that one actually, I fall a bit into that illusion or something when I I experienced it the last week, and I experience it quite often. When I'm in a group and I start keeping my emotions to myself in a way that it's like not fully allowing them within me. And my judgment is that, oh, it's just me. It's because I'm so sensitive. And usually what happens for me and what brings the insight when I start to allow myself to really have my experience and I start to allow it more into the group as well. At some point, it suddenly switches and I start seeing, oh, that person actually seems scared too. And that person seems to have some kind of discomfort of fear or, oh, and but that person seems relaxed. Like it pretty immediately switches and I start to see people around me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the yeah, I don't have sort of proper words for it, but in my experience, it's like when I'm inside myself, which is a form of narcissism, I guess. It's like I see the world only through my own problem or anxiety. And then it's like, yeah, everything becomes projection, and every one is just part of that story of something's wrong with me or there's a problem I can't solve here. And then it's like when that releases, which typically happens when I bring it out somehow, like tell the truth either to myself or like internally or actually in connection. It's like that releases, and then suddenly it's like there's so much space to actually be with others. And very often that brings on compassion. It's just like, oh, everyone's in trouble. Like, oh, no one here is actually just perfectly on top of the situation. Um, there's always a certain level, well, very few social situations doesn't have a level of anxiety for us, right?
Yeah.
So there's something with this whole making it about me
Yeah.
that I don't know. It's a move I make a lot, and I imagine that most people do it a lot. At least I've seen it a lot in circles and in life in general.
Yeah.
That we have this idea that I've sometimes called it that like our suffering is unique. Like we're the only one suffering in this moment,
Yeah.
and and when that can be dropped as like it's a completely different reality.
Yeah. Yeah. Which reminds me of this. Oh, if I expect myself to just let go of my experience, like prematurely, I actually also let go of the possibility for real intimacy with others. Push that away. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. If there's an idea that I need to fix myself before I'm allowed to be with you,
Yeah.
that I think for me that will always lead to me moving away in the attempt to fix. And then we might meet afterwards, but there will be a distance that is equal to my level of fixing in some way. That like the stuff I've put away will create distance between us.
Yeah.
It's like the move seems to be actually to go the other way, to
Yeah.
like to move forward and like, oh, there's this, and it's tricky or painful or vulnerable, but I want to be with you.
Yeah. In practice, for me, what I see is that it actually, in a way, the time spent with certain difficult emotions are actually ideally like shortening. Not ideally, but in my experience of, oh, when I actually just feel them as they come up, I kind of feel through them and this flux happens where, oh, and then also pretty immediately I feel something else. I think it's sometimes because we have this backlog. I feel it so strongly if like when I'm unwilling to feel my fear. Fear is a big one that I just also experience with a lot of people. It's like we have trained ourselves to, instead of fear, feel self-critical. Is often my experience, or certain beliefs. Um, so there's something that happens where it seems like when we're in deep practice in circling, my experience is actually that we switch sometimes quite fast between, oh, now we feel fear, but actually somebody else is cracking a joke and there's also some joy while we are with this difficult emotion, or there's some ease or like relief or grounding. And it feels quite different to when I'm in groups where there's avoidance or there's a pattern that one or several people are avoiding, including myself. There's a term that my friend Rich made up called the jokes Tourette's. Like Tourette, like the symptom or the where it almost feels like we're cracking jokes almost without a choice. Like there's fear, there's unsafety, and therefore we go to like play or like make jokes, but it doesn't quite feel like it's actually from a relaxed nervous system or it's from actually allowing the fear. So what I strongly experience is the lack of choice. It's like, oh, if I bring more awareness and I allow myself to feel my fear, I can feel the choice of, oh, I could make a joke, but I could also just actually breathe a bit into my belly. So there's, for me, a very clear difference between um, groups where we try to be playful or joyful, but we don't fully embrace the fear or the unsafety or discomfort. And then groups that are like playful, but everyone feels comfortable enough to at any point say, oh, we're joking, but actually I feel a bit uncomfortable. So like there's this choice. People can switch between different emotions and the variety of what is embraced is just a lot bigger.
Yeah, something I think is something I'm curious about, I guess, is this idea that it's somehow the room or the practice that makes you feel bad. So it's like, because I have this perspective that I often bring when I lead, that like we are actually just 15 adults sitting in a room together. Like that's sort of the material thing that's going on here. We do this quite often. And then we are talking about what's going on for us in a way that's unusual. And so there's more presence and maybe there's more emotional availability and maybe some difficult stuff comes up. And it's like, well, if you're in that room and you're feeling anxious or sad or whatever other emotion you might label as negative, it's like, well, what's going on? Like, what does it mean when you say that you would prefer not to feel that? And like, how will you? Yeah, I think it just makes me sort of, how do you live your life if you don't want to have those experiences because they're part of life?
Mm.
And if they're happening in this room with 15 random adults, I'm almost certain that you're also experiencing it outside of this room. At least that's how it works for me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I like hearing that, which it also brings a lot of tenderness. Of, wow, yeah, we don't choose to, like in a way, like we don't voluntarily think it's fun to not want to choose to feel our fear. Like, wow, that probably just really points to how vulnerable it is and how challenging and it just means it's incredibly meaningful, right? Because it's people's life. It's not just a workshop, it's actually how they relate to the one life they have.
yeah, I think that is something, there's something here that I find is sometimes misunderstood about circling and in particular surrender leadership, I guess, where people can come with this like, this is something that's being done to me. which I think would be legitimate and fair if I was leading an authentic relating games night, and I had picked the games, and I had only picked games that make people really sad, which I guess would be possible, or like just the most anxiety-inducing games I could choose. If then a participant came to me and they were like, why did you make this anxiety workshop? That was not what you actually told us was going to happen. I would be like, yeah, that's actually true. But in a surrender leadership context, it's more like, well, I'm not actually in control of what's happening here. It is arising in presence between us, and the practice is to look at it and be like, well, what is happening?
Yeah.
Why are you experiencing all of this anxiety right now? What's it like for you to be experiencing it, and sort of not make it wrong and not force anyone to stay in it, but be with them in it and see what it's like.
Yeah.
But I think there's sometimes like a sort of a conflation between the emotion that is arising and the context of the workshop, that like that must be the same, that we've somehow planned for it to be about anxiety, and at least that's not how it is for me when I lead these practices.
Yeah. Yeah, I started thinking about agency and how there's something funny about agency for me, where in one way that is my experience of being alive. Like, oh, we can actually choose. Like, there are a lot of things that there's almost like a solution quite often where, oh, that's just how it's done. Like, there are a couple of like almost like collective illusions that I see where it's like, yeah, we pretend we don't have agency in different ways. Something is being done to me. I don't have choice. I cannot change it. I don't have any power. And people also bring these things into circling, which would result in something like, oh, you're doing this to me. I didn't know I could choose something else. But it's like, um, I don't want to tell people that all the time in the beginning of a workshop, oh, you can actually choose, by the way, in case you haven't noticed, like, because then I kind of give the impression that this is something that needs to be clarified, that isn't just always actually already true. Because in my experience, it is true that you can actually choose. And it's quite vulnerable because people will get in touch with the ways in which they think they don't have agency, or they feel like something is being done to them potentially because they weren't aware that they could actually say no, even though they sit in a workshop with a workshop leader. Like, I think this is important for me, where, oh, you actually have, yeah, I care about us getting back in touch with the innate agency that nobody can actually take from us. Like, even though I sit here as a leader and I might feel fear, you're actually free to not feel that or feel completely different. And it seems like a lot of us need reminders, maybe particularly since we've had experiences that give us the impression that we don't have agency, we cannot choose, things aren't allowed.
Yeah, and I guess on the other side, I do also acknowledge that as a leader, I am more empowered in some ways from just the power projection that is on me as a leader to change the room than most participants.
Yeah.
Like, people do listen more to what I say when I am in the leadership position.
Yeah.
So in that way, there is also like I can also see the sort of the blame as true. That is like, why aren't you doing anything? You could do something to change this, but you're not.
Yeah.
And then often it's like, when I hear that, for me, it's like, yeah, I don't actually see a problem. It's like I hear that you're struggling and I want to be with you in your struggle, but like I'm not sure if it makes sense for me to change the vibe of the room, or if I'm even able to sort of accommodate that it's difficult for you in some way.
Yeah. In some scenarios, I could also see that somebody saying that, pointing towards, oh, it seems like there's something that isn't okay for you. And it's not just, oh, I don't want to feel this. It's more like, oh, yeah, actually, I don't want to be asked right now. Or, oh, actually, something is happening that I feel a no to or something. And it feels really lovely. And being with people in the exploration where they find their own power to, oh, yeah, I don't actually. I had that come up yesterday in a conversation with circling. We're like, oh, if it's too vulnerable, you don't actually have to share anything.
Mm.
And I think that's also like a projection I get often with circling. It's like, oh, we're going immediately into vulnerability. I think in some ways, yes, but also I think the mistake I did in the first few years of mistake, or I guess the insight I've gotten is quite often when I sit down, I might feel something quite intense, but I might also feel the ways in which I don't immediately just want to open up. Or my opening really includes this experience of, oh, I don't actually quite feel safe to share parts of my experience. Or really honoring myself actually means that I'm like slowly coming in, or like slowly opening, but also really allowing myself to be a little bit reserved, or like, yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I think like different metaphors in some way, like where the metaphor I don't like so much is like that you have to go digging in your own guts to sort of find the vulnerability to bring out. That is the sort of deepest, darkest secrets of your life, and that you have to show to the group, because that's what we do here. Like that, and sometimes that can be in the group field somehow, where at least I sometimes experience questions coming at people as sort of, it's like claws digging for like more blood. Um, and then there's a different kind of vulnerability that has much more the quality of like, here I am, like right now, with whatever's going on, which might be that it's a bit difficult for me to be with you, or it might be that I actually really enjoy being with you, which can be quite vulnerable, to just be like, well, I actually enjoy your company, and just being in this sort of mundane state with you, it's pleasurable for me. It's like, is it also pleasurable for you? Then there's quite a deep intimacy in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I got like cringy, or like just from hearing this blood digging. And yeah, I think what I'm getting in touch with is every time like I hear some of these criticisms or hesitations about circling, I think there is something really to them. Like, where I want to separate the practice from them though. Like, yes, I think there's a really like, I almost like want to encourage people. Like, yes, I think what you felt there, that resistance, is really intelligent and really pointing towards something and really important. And I don't want you to override it, or, oh, something is so great, just whatever you felt wasn't true or something. I think it often speaks towards potentially the leader or the group field or the group culture or the expectations we have on ourselves. because circling is so empty in itself actually that it's going to be filled up with whatever way of relating to the moment we have, or way of relating to ourselves or to others, and that will come up, and it's not the practice itself actually. And I think it gets really clear when people continue the practice with different leaders and they have wildly different experiences. And also when people do the practice long enough that they see they go through these phases very clearly. And those are collective phases that we can see. It's like the digging for vulnerability at some point, or the honesty thing we talked about last time, where it's just like, yeah, now we're just all going to be really honest and ruthless with each other. There are these phases, or they also come with gifts or shadows. And yeah, circling is not going to be this magical practice that just by itself is going to not have you run into all these problems you face in your life. But ideally, with good leadership, I think there's enough awareness that that it's a real space for insight.
Yeah, I think it points to something not being included often when I hear these criticisms. And that there can be many reasons for that, but like something I've experienced a lot with people I've met that have come up to me because they don't like circling. So it's typically not in a circling context. It's somewhere else, and they kind of know that I lead circling, so they want to tell me that they don't like it and why. And often when we explore it a bit, we end up in a place where it's like, oh, you didn't like this thing in the circle, and you didn't think that you could say that because you thought that circling was that. And then typically when I just encourage the idea, could you bring that thing that you were experiencing? Because exactly as you say, I'm like, that sounds intelligent. Like that sounds reasonable that you had that experience. And I imagine that if that had been part of the circle, it would have been a much better circle for you, but likely also for everyone else. And then often people have this like, oh yeah, maybe that could have happened. And at least there's the possibility of that. Then there's a whole layer of skill. That's like, could that have been skillfully brought? And sometimes we do get in trouble when we have something that can sound like a criticism and it's brought with a bit of charge, and then we really get in trouble. So it's like, I'm not saying it's easy necessarily. I'm just saying that there's a potential for these things to be included. And yeah, it's like what I call the stepping backwards move. It's like, oh, this crunchy dilemma that I'm experiencing, maybe I don't have to be stuck in it for 3 hours or 2 days or whatever. Maybe I can take a step backward and be like, I'm in a crunchy dilemma. What do you think about that? Or like, can I get some help in looking at my dilemma right now?
Yeah.
And that changes the game a lot.
Yeah, it's there's a clear difference in skill sometimes in the rooms. Like, oh, how skillful is the leader actually? Like it doesn't seem to be obvious to people that it makes a massive difference for the practice. Whether somebody has done this a couple of times before, or whether somebody's trained in this, or like this is a focal point of their profession and has been like a spiritual mystical path for 10 years, 15 years. And it makes a big difference. Or whether you're in a room, not just the leader, but the room is filled with people who are like quite mature and have waking up practices or cleaning up practices. So that's going to make a big difference as well. And I think that's lovely how much skill sharing there is, more than I've seen in other practices actually, where somebody has a really impressive waking up practice, and I'm going to really feel that, and I'm really going to get in touch with it. So I'm going to actually get insights I would maybe otherwise not have. Somebody comes and I often experience that actually with people who do systemic work, like constellations. And I suddenly get a whole new skill level into the circle that I'm suddenly being touched with. It's like, wow, I didn't even realize you could do that. And I think this is really the touching point of circling. One of the many. Like the way we get in touch with each other's consciousness or maturity level, or even the states. Like if somebody just sits there in a really strong, transcendental, non-dual state, people who have never felt that, who have never even meditated, might suddenly get in touch with that state as well. It's quite touching, I find.
Yeah, I think it's like, well, one of the ways I often talk about it is, so it's people typically experience that it's pretty hard to circle outside of circling, at least in the beginning. So it's like you're in a circle and you have some really good experiences of opening up, talking about your relationship to your parents, and then you try to go and do that with your parents, and it doesn't work, or at least doesn't work in the same way. It's like, well, but that is because in most circles, people are circling themselves also, which means that they're actually willing to listen a little bit more to the depth of what you're saying rather than sort of the surface level tension where there might be a lot of noise. They listen a little bit deeper to you, and they listen a little bit deeper to themselves and try to bring more of the truth.
Yeah.
And when everybody's doing that, or just the person you're talking to is doing that, you get a very different meeting. Like the quality of the connection is very different than if you're with someone that doesn't do that. And I think that's often not really seen, how big a part of the practice that is, that there are actually people in the room who are consistently doing that. And that makes being together a different thing.
Yeah. Which also is a power, like similar to how therapy in one way can actually just mean you get to experience what it's like to be with someone who's more securely attached or to presence. And I think that often happens in these circles. Like, oh, somebody is responding, like they don't actually mind that I'm feeling any of this. And that imprints a new experience that I've never had before in my life. Or that's really rewiring, I think, for a lot of things in us. Because something else came to mind where I do think there are a couple of like I could see it really be true for some circles where there is a fixation. I think I've had that at times in my life where it almost felt like I could fixate on suffering, though. Like we did mention it a bit in the beginning, and I want to come back to that. It's like it was almost like I could at times train myself to like look for the suffering or look for the hardship and imagine there was. I think you actually created that sentence for me in my world. Like anything could be avoidance. Like I might actually avoid something, or like something might feel scary if I would just actually allow myself to relax, allow things to be the way they are. And there might even be avoidance or like safety seeking in, oh, but isn't there something wrong, or like something feels tense, or there can also be this the lack of understanding. Like it's a skill to know whether something is happening inside me or outside of me. And I think that type can also come out in circling sometimes, where when I started circling, I couldn't distinguish those two. So I felt anxiety in myself and I kept looking for it outside of me. And it came out as a version of, oh, but something is off. I'm pretty sure that something is off. And then everyone kind of started looking for it or something. Where, of course, we couldn't actually regulate it because it was actually inside of me in a way. So I think there can be really circles where it feels like trying to just sit in suffering or kind of almost like look for it potentially.
Yeah. Or just the idea that we should be doing important work, and that means that we need to look at our trauma or whatever. And in that, missing out on, well, what's present here right now is actually just that I really enjoy being with you, and I enjoy the conversation. That's like the main thing that's present. And sort of I want that to have real value as well.
Yeah.
Because that's actually what I want more of in my life also, is just the quality of like, wow, this is actually pleasurable for me to be around people.
Yeah. And then the contrary to that is where I really want to stand up for it doesn't actually work to avoid. And I think it's quite likely that like a lot of people almost like potentially build their whole life on that, on trying to avoid certain things. And so it can be really confronting. And that's where sometimes I experience myself as being challenged or like really having to look inwards. Like, what is it actually in my experience? Like, what is the space I'm inviting for as a leader? Like, part of me obviously also wants to avoid and potentially even agree with that person, but when I really start looking, I haven't actually found a way of like living pain-free, wholesome, wholehearted, without also being willing to feel the depth of the pain that's there. And at certain times in life, that can just be a lot, like the dark night of the soul moments, or like, somebody quitting their job, or like divorce, or sickness. And the alternative that I've seen is just, yeah, if you don't feel it, if you don't allow it, it doesn't mean constantly, but it doesn't mean I want to get lost in it. I want to start identifying with it and collapse, but I want to allow it as the experience I'm having, not as I am this, but this is what I'm feeling. This is in one way also just the human experience or the cosmic experience flowing through me. Otherwise, the alternatives I just see, and I think there's so much collective, is people avoid it and then feel numb, depressed, addictions, and also just a lot of chronic pain, like pain we cause to ourselves because, instead of feeling the sadness, I'm just gonna start like lumping it into this tension in my stomach, for example, because then I feel a bit less. So it seems like, yeah, I think I feel humbled, like it's really difficult at times. And sometimes it feels like the whole society is kind of working against us in a way because there's so much about dopamine hits and addictions and consumption. But I also just see it as the best thing we can do to not die, actually, or make ourselves sick.
I was at a workshop this weekend where we did a practice that I quite liked. It was like really simple somehow. It's like the first step is just to vent about an emotional experience you've had. Just like, I don't know, the last fight you had with your partner or your parents or whatever. And you just basically tell the story about it and allow whatever emotion comes into play. And then at some point you stop and feel. So you disconnect the story from the feeling and sensation in the body, and you just stay with that for a while. Like, what's it actually like? And you can try to name it, but just naming it simply, just naming the feeling, just naming the sensation, again, not the story. And then after doing that for a while, which seemed to, at least the times I tried it here or looked at it here, like it really seems to drop everyone into like a deeper sense of just, oh, this is what it is. And it's different somehow. And then when you start talking about it again afterwards, which is the third step, so reflecting on situation, it's different. Like you just talk about it in a different way, you see it in a different way because you've actually felt the thing. And that was quite beautiful, and I was like a bit sort of, whoa, that was a wild practice. And I was like, oh yeah, but this is actually what we do all the time in circling, just not as structured.
Yeah.
But there is this returning to, and sometimes it's a bit sort of, it becomes a bit dogmatic or sort of silly in some way that people always ask, like, what's it like in your body? But there is something with doing these stops from the story and going in and like, oh, what's it really like? What happens when I take time to feel this?
Yeah.
And then come back to connection.
It reminds me of a particular practice. I mean, it's less structured. It's in a way I think it's a practice, but it's also what seems to naturally arise at some point. That felt really mind blowing. That I think is similar, but maybe even more extreme in a way. This is what I've learned in therapy school, like integral psychotherapy. With a lot of people in the beginning, you would practice the skill of disidentifying, because like I think usually people have one or the other where they feel challenged, but there's a whole category of people who feel challenged by just being so absorbed, like collapsing into their emotions or like completely being taken by them. And it's quite an important skill to be able to see that, oh, I'm feeling this, but it's not all of me. I can, like you say, do the step back, and all these things are really, really helpful, really important skill, I think. Once we have trained that, there's this incredible thing that I have experienced in my life, and also with lots of clients or even in circling. The liberation, I think it's often talked about the liberation that comes from disidentifying, like very Buddhist tradition, for example. There's also liberation that comes from then, once we trust that we could disidentify from it. What's it actually like feeling like the depth of the fear, like the depth of the thing you really don't want to feel? What about just allowing yourself to like completely be flushed, like let it just completely run through you? And that is like what it can feel like when we're like in a skillful relationship with our experience. It's like, wow, I just feel the depth of my fear, or as deep as I could feel it right now. And it's almost like this adrenaline, or like this, wow, so much aliveness. And the thing I always thought was scary and that I spent weeks or years avoiding, you can actually just feel it like sometimes in 30 seconds. It's just like, whoa, that was actually awesome. Like,
yeah, and the way I would hold it when we talk about identification, that is actually the way to disidentify from something.
Yeah.
It like there's a move that is avoidance, and that can be necessary, maybe healthy, sometimes to sort of, okay, I'm not this, I'm just going to leave it for now. But then my experience is that healing, in lack of a better word, comes from actually allowing it as fully as I can, and that is an embodied thing. It's like, and at some level, it's like physically also releasing tension in my body, allowing something to flow that hasn't been allowed to flow before. And then when I have felt it fully, it's like then it also lets go more. So I become less of it by welcoming it.
Yeah.
Which is the paradox that we often work with, I think.
Yeah. Which is also like, instead of it being, like stored in my body, or like the shoulder tension or the jaw tension, or there's by now I think a fair amount of research for whoever needs to know that, showing how sickness, cancer, specific kinds of cancers, or even like specific tension patterns or specific emotions we haven't allowed ourselves to feel. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how it correlates with various disease, but there's definitely, like, my personal experience is very clear that like emotional contraction in me is connected to physical contraction, physical tension in my body, definitely.
And I also imagine as a body worker, you've seen that in others.
Yeah, for sure. And it's kind of the same process, that it's like welcoming what is there and then going through it and actually feeling it seems to bring relief.
Yeah.
Like in myself, it's like I physically feel lighter afterwards. Like my way of being in the world is lighter.
Yeah.
Because I'm not carrying around all of this stuff that I'm tensing up around.
Yeah. That resonates with the experience I've had when I am on circling trainings or circling weekends, circling retreats, and I circle over several days. My experience is that a lot of my avoidant patterns fall more and more away. And I think that's one of the wholesomeness that I look for in practitioners of a practice. And I know, oh, that seems to be a good practice because, oh, actually, I start to eat better. I was joking the last 2 days here when I was talking with people about circling about floor time and wall time. Like, I've just experienced myself lying on floors. Like, there's something to actually being held that seems to be surprisingly regulating for people, actually. Like the safety of when we're uncomfortable to actually just lie down and have earth or the ground hold us. Or like, instead of scrolling, I'm actually spending more time like kind of almost like staring into a white wall and not being stimulated, or yeah, preferably down here in the sun and just looking at the trees and hearing the birds. And my experience is that when people have this idea of, oh, in circling we're just going to feel the misery or the suffering, it's not like I'm spending a lot of time sitting there crying. It actually looks more that I'm sitting there doing nothing for more. I'm allowing to feel myself like, oh yeah, I'm just sitting here. And what I'm actually doing, I'm just feeling the tension in my stomach. And it seems like if I consciously participate in it, it seems to actually release bit by bit. And that in practice, that's actually how it looks like for me. Also in circling and good circling of what does it look like when we drop more into presence? We might actually just sit here and nobody really says something for a while. And it feels quite intimate because there's an intimacy with the subtleness of our experience. And there might not be something big happening. It might just be, oh yeah, I'm feeling my jaw tension and it seems to actually release when I'm with it. Or I seem to feel the anger that seems to be stored in there a little bit, like it's subtle emotions often, somaticized emotions.
Yeah, and again, it's like it's funny when we talk in this format. It's like I think we both do it. It's like the polarity immediately comes up. That is like, and it can look like fucking being in there and being an animal, or like being in a fight, or like being fully active somehow, or active in a more outwardly way.
Yeah.
As well. And the fucking trickiness of it is that, as you said at some point, it's like they can both be avoidance. It's like, and it's impossible to say what is and what isn't without actually being in presence.
Yeah.
And that is such a uniquely challenging thing in this practice. and in life, I guess.
Yeah.
I would like to round off around here, if that works for you.
Yeah, I think the last thing I wanted to say, and that fits really well, I think, is I just really deeply care about people's experience. And I'm really feeling that. It's like, or somebody, I often experience that in circling, but also in my normal life. It's like, I see somebody they look like they spent the whole time trying to not feel something. And when I'm with that, I actually just want to sit there and feel their fear for a bit. And not like, oh, now you have to do this thing. It's more like, how about we sit down and feel it a bit, because I actually want to be with you in it. And that's one of the most touching experiences I have. And even people who think they need to avoid, usually after 10 minutes of that, they love it actually. It's really releasing something for them. Wanted to highlight that. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, there's something to this thing with like getting over myself. But like it's so clear for me that like anytime I manage to sort of let go of this idea that it's about me and that I have some kind of big problem in the situation that I need to solve, I release that.
Yeah.
I just feel so much compassion.
Yeah.
For others and just for the sort of human condition that is like fuck, everyone is struggling here in their own way, and suddenly it's available to just be with that. And yeah, that's really just very beautiful for me.
Right. So for me, there's also encouragement of what is the thing we do in circling. The easiest way of seeing it is, yeah, we're not alone with our experience. And sometimes when something is difficult, my go-to place is always like, if something is difficult for me, it means I need more support, more compassion, not more criticism. Like, otherwise I would have already solved it or like been with it. So it's like, oh, it seems like this is really difficult for me to feel. How would it be to just ask someone to sit down and feel it with me?
Cool. Yeah, I want to just say that if someone is watching this and you have questions or criticisms of circling, it would be fun to hear them. Because then we might take it up in another call at some point.
Or dilemmas or challenges, whatever it is. And yeah, I would love to hear how this lands on people. Cool. Thanks, Peter.
Yeah, thank you.